Hey, I thought it was time for another Steely Dan video. You know, we're sitting here, we're waiting for the Royal Scam and Katie Lied, the two remaining UHQR releases to come from Analog Productions. I don't even know currently what the order is on those two. And the ETD on both of those is up in the air. I haven't heard anything on either of those titles for quite some time. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to kind of kill the time a little bit and talk about another aspect of Steely Dan. And, there are arguments out there which they're supported in fact. When we got to Pretzel Logic, Donald and Walter were already kind of feathering in some session players. And I thought it would be kind of cool to focus on a handful of session players that made huge contributions to different albums in the Steely Dan catalog. And I'm gonna feature several albums. All of these are by artists who not only are they well known for being top-notch A-list session players, and they were worthy enough to get the call from Gary Katz after Donald and or Walter or both told Gary, hey, call this guy, let's get him in. They've had several releases as band leaders, air quotes, or as part of collectives that are really cool records. And, a lot of these artists and a lot of these albums that I'm going to show have been classified, with a classification as being jazz fusion or jazz rock fusion. To be honest, some of these records are not easily pigeonholed. But I will say that if you seek these out, they are very inexpensive. They're really not that difficult to find. I was on a recent little record shopping foray into the greater Los Angeles area. Thanks again, Rob and Jim. What a fantastic day. I'm already in the back of my mind planning a repeat visit. I'm not sure how soon that can happen, but man, I had a great time spending most of a day just hitting a bunch of record shops and hitting the bins in earnest. Breaking bread with those two gentlemen and finding several gems. Go back and check out my Los Angeles record shopping video from, a month back. And Rob put one out as well, so check his out. Anyway, where was I? I think it would be cool to feature a few of these records that these session players that were so important to Steely Dan put out under their own name or as collectives. Let's start with kind of a cool record by Victor Feldman. That little weird atmospheric kind of marimba-ish opening to Ricky Don't Lose That Number? That's Victor. In fact, we could go look at the credits. I think Victor Feldman appears as a session player on the highest amount of Steely Dan catalog records than any other player I'm going to feature today. This is really cool. This came out in 1977. It includes a groovy cover of Stevie Wonder's Isn't She Lovely? But most of these tunes actually skew more towards jazz and hard bop than anything else I'm going to talk about today. But the Artful Dodger, great sound quality on this. This was mastered at the mastering lab by none other than Doug Sachs. Did you watch that stream last week with Steve Westman had Steve Hoffman on? Steve Hoffman, no slouch himself, considers Doug Sachs the best of the best of the best of all time, as far as, speaking about mastering engineers. In fact, he is actually credited right there on the back cover. So yeah, if you find this in the bins, don't hesitate. This is some great, great music. Randy and Michael Brecker, they were part of a group named after themselves, of course, the Brecker Brothers Band. This is a real workout of an album. It is funky. It is smooth. It features both of these guys who were so important to the soundscapes of Gaucho, and also some real heavy hitters are on this. Don Grolnick on Fender Rhodes and keys. You will see Steve Kahn peeking in this photo as well. Of course, the great Will Lee from David Letterman's band fame. This is a great record. I think this was their second album, the second Brecker Brothers record. And this goes down a treat. I mean, listen to some of these titles. Keep It Steady, The Brecker Bump, Dig a Little Deeper, Grease Piece. They just sound like they're going to be funky, and believe me, they are. This is a heavy, heavy, heavy slab of R&B, soul, funk, grooves extraordinaire. Definitely pick this up. Speaking of the Royal Scam, I saw Steely Dan circa 2011, I think it was. They used to do a string of shows at the Beacon on the Upper West Side in Manhattan, and they would do album nights. And I saw the Royal Scam, and guess who was sitting in? Larry Carlton. Larry Carlton, he has an extensive solo catalog, and he was so important to the soundscape of the Royal Scam and also Asia. What an incredible player. What an incredible tone that this guy has. I love this record because we have both Jeff Porcaro on drums on some of these, and we have Steve Gadd on others. It's also really cool that in the actual track credits and listings, he will actually list out which guitar he played on each track. He went as far in the credits, to thank Valley Arts Guitar for making my Valley Arts Strat. Pretty cool. This was also mastered at the mastering lab by Doug Sachs's old right-hand man, Mike Reese. And Mike Reese is credited in the credits as well, and you will find TML in the Dead Wax. All of these Larry Carlton records can be found really cheaply. I'm talking $5, $6, $7, so don't hesitate on this either. Another guy who was really important on the Gaucho album and a key component to a big chunk of Joni Mitchell's touring career, Tom Scott. And by the way, Tom Scott has a really cool podcast, and there is an episode with Donald Fagen from 3 or 4 years ago, kind of during the pandemic. Check that out if you are interested. I highly recommend it. I mean, look at this period piece cover. I was checking out this lady. I can't tell if she's nude or not on the cover, but it wouldn't surprise me. There is the back cover. I just put up an Instagram post about this record yesterday. I was listening to it kind of intently. And it kind of gave me really strong vibes of late 1970s Paul Simon. I'm talking about, late in the evening and slip sliding away. And if you look at the credits, we can connect the dots here basically. Guitar, Eric Gale, also Hugh McCracken, big Steely Dan connection with Hugh McCracken, of course. Drums, Rick Marotta. Drums on other tracks by none other than Steve Gadd. And piano and Fender Rhodes, the great Richard T., who of course was on those late 70s Paul Simon records as well. So there's a connection for you. But Tom Scott, again, he was all over the Gaucho album in particular. And he's got Chuck Rainey on bass on many of these tunes as well. This is definitely cheap heat. Very, very strongly recommended. A great vibe record. It just has a certain feel. It puts you back into 1977 when this was released. This came out on Ode Records. There's the label for you. Again, probably a $7 or $8 or maybe $9 record. Highly recommended. I would be remiss if I don't mention this guy who actually just put out a autobiography within the last month or two. Of course, Mike McDonald. This is his 82 solo record. And, the big hit on this was I Keep Forgetting. And that bass line on I Keep Forgetting is unbelievable. I think it's been sampled many times. And it was by the great Joseph Johnson of the Brothers Johnson fame. This is a fantastic record. So many great songs on here, and dig deeper than just don't stop at I Keep Forgetting, because the rest of this thing is amazing. It's got Jeff Porcaro on it all over the place. And also Steve Lukather, Toto bandmate, is on this record as well, and on several tracks. This is a really well-recorded, well-engineered record, produced by Ted Templeman. Last but not least, someone that I really have become enamored with over the last several months. I think it was kind of the lead up, waiting for that Gaucho UHQR to drop. And I started listening to interviews with the guitarist Steve Kahn. He's done several podcast interviews over the last several years. He is so critically important to the soundscape that was on Gaucho. And he has some incredible kind of group efforts. This is a really cool record called Eyewitness. And it's basically a quartet along with Anthony Jackson on bass, who of course was on Gaucho as well. Steve Jordan handled drums. Heard of Steve Jordan lately? Rolling Stones? That is the back here. This guy's guitar tone and phrasing is just incredible. He has very lyrical guitar lines and a bluesy, jazzy feel with a little bit of grit in some of these runs. A really cool guitarist. And, there is a track on here called Dr. Slump. Dr. Slump, you put that on, and one album to me immediately came to mind. That was Joe's Garage by Zappa. And in particular, Watermelon and Easter Hay. If you know Watermelon and Easter Hay, you know how important that is in the Zappa oeuvre. one of the best guitar solos of all time. And Zappa had two different guitar tones going on that song because he was using two different guitars. You can see that Steve Conn used an E335 here, but wow, Eyewitness is absolutely amazing. I'm starting to dig into 3 or 4 other Steve Conn records that I have picked up over the last 3 months, but I can tell you this is a huge winner for me. Atmospheric, vibey, just the players working together, virtuosistic. The word virtuosity comes to mind, and improvisation. I mean, the bass runs that Anthony Jackson has on this record and on several of these tracks is just otherworldly. Highly, highly recommended. That is Steve Conn's Eyewitness. And the crazy thing is, this was recorded over 2 days in late 1981. One hell of a record. I'm going to call this thing 6 Degrees of Steely Dan. Hope you enjoyed it. Check out these other artists that made such a great contribution to so many Steely Dan records. Their recorded discographies are amazing. Even the amount of other people that they played with and on their records. But check out their actual, they're close to the heart productions that they put out under their own name. I don't think you will be disappointed. Take care, everybody.